Welcome back to our deep dive into the tragic saga of Stratholme. In part 2, the city's legacy takes a darker turn. From the dramatic trial of Tirion Fordring, where honor clashes with justice, to Thrall's bold raid to save an orc elder, Stratholme becomes a battleground of ideals. But the true horror unfolds with the Third War, as the plague of Undeath and Prince Arthas' fateful choice ignite the Culling of Stratholme, forever scarring the city. Join us as we explore betrayal, sacrifice, and the rise of the Scourge. Let's step into Azeroth's darkest hour. Tyrion's actions led to his arrest and a charge of treason, a grave accusation that shook the Alliance leadership. The trial was held in the Hall of Justice in Stratholme, presided over by Uther the Lightbringer, the most revered paladin of the Silver Hand and a close comrade of Tyrion's. The proceedings were overseen by various leaders of the Alliance, likely including representatives from Lordaeron and other human kingdoms, underscoring the significance of the case. The choice of Uther to conduct the trial was poignant, given his shared history with Tirion as a founding paladin, yet it also reflected the impartiality expected of the Silver Hand in upholding justice. During the trial, Tirion defended his actions, arguing that Eitrigg was an honorable individual who posed no threat to the Alliance, and that blind hatred towards orcs was contrary to the principles of the Light. Despite his impassioned plea, the Alliance leaders, still scarred by the devastation of the Second War, viewed any sympathy toward an orc as unacceptable. Tirion was found guilty of treason, a verdict that carried severe consequences. He was stripped of his paladin powers in a ritual that severed his connection to the Light, a devastating blow to a man defined by his faith. Additionally, he was exiled from Alliance lands, effectively casting him out of the society he had fought to protect. The day following Tyrion's trial, Stratholme faced an unexpected assault that would further cement the event's place in history. A small but highly skilled band of orcs, led by the young Warchief Thrall, attacked the city with the specific goal of rescuing Eitrigg. Thrall, who had recently united the orc clans into a reformed horde free of demonic influence, had learned of Eitrigg's capture and saw his rescue as a matter of honor. Eitrigg, a respected elder who had served the old horde, was a symbol of the orcs' potential for redemption, and Thrall was determined to save him from execution or imprisonment. The attack was a bold and calculated strike, demonstrating Thrall's tactical genius and the loyalty of his warriors. Despite their small numbers, the orcs exploited the element of surprise, targeting key defenses and creating chaos in Stratholme's streets. The city's guards, caught off guard, struggled to mount an effective response, as the attack was swift and focused. The raid was not intended to conquer or destroy Stratholme, but to infiltrate the city, locate Eitrigg, and escape with them. Amidst the chaos, Tirion Fordring, still reeling from his trial in exile, found himself in a position to act. Despite his disgrace, Tyrion's sense of honor compelled him to assist Eitrigg once more. As Thrall's forces breached the city and secured Eitrigg, Tirion aided their escape, ensuring that both he and Eitrigg could flee into the countryside beyond Stratholme's walls. This act of defiance further solidified Tyrion's break with the Alliance, as he chose personal integrity over loyalty to a system he believed that had lost its moral compass. The trial of Tirion Fordring and the subsequent orc attack on Stratholme had far-reaching implications for the Alliance, the Horde, and the individuals involved. For Tirion, the trial marked a turning point in his life, setting him on a path of exile and introspection. Though stripped of his paladin powers, his faith in the Light and his commitment to honor remained unshaken. In time, Tirion would redeem himself, reclaiming his connection to the Light and becoming a pivotal figure in the fight against the Scourge, particularly as the leader of the Argent Crusade. His defense of Eitrigg also foreshadowed his later efforts to bridge divides between factions, advocating for unity in the face of greater threats. For the Alliance, the trial exposed tensions within its leadership and society. The harsh judgment against Tirion reflected a lingering hatred of orcs, rooted in the horrors of the Second War, but it also raised questions about the Alliance's sense of justice and mercy. Uther's role in condemning Tirion, while consistent with his duty, weighed heavily on him, highlighting the personal cost of leadership. The orc attack, though limited in scope, was a stark reminder of the Alliance's vulnerabilities, even in a stronghold like Stratholme. It also damaged the city's prestige, as a successful rescue of Eitrigg by Thrall's forces embarrassed the local authorities. For Thrall and the reformed Horde, the rescue of Eitrigg was a significant moment in the early history of the new Horde. It demonstrated Thrall's commitment to honor and his ability to lead his people with purpose, even against formidable odds. Eitrigg's rescue strengthened the bonds within the Horde itself, as it showed that Thrall would risk much to protect one of his own. The event also marked an early interaction between Thrall and Tirion, two figures who would later play crucial roles in shaping Azeroth's future. hinting at the potential for understanding between humans and orcs. Stratholme itself, while not significantly damaged by the raid, bore the weight of these events as part of its storied history. The city's role as a site of Tyrion's trial, and the orc attack added to its complex legacy as a place of both triumph and turmoil, just as it had been the birthplace of the Silverhand and a victim of the Horde's destruction in the Second War. Stratholme now stood as a stage for moral and military conflicts that foreshadowed the challenges to come, particularly the devastating events of the Third War. The trial of Tirion Fordring in Stratholme's Hall of Justice and the daring orc attack led by Thrall encapsulate a moment of profound change in the Kingdom of Lordaeron. These events challenged the Alliance's notion of justice, tested the bonds of honor among its heroes, and showcased the emergent strength of the new Horde under Thrall's leadership. For Stratholme, they added another chapter to its history as a city of great significance, where the ideals of the light were both upheld and questioned. Tyrion's exile and Eitrigg's rescue, set against the backdrop of a city still healing from past wounds, reflect the enduring struggle to find balance between vengeance and redemption in a world scarred by war. Third War. Stratholme, the second largest city in Lordaeron and a beacon of human civilization, was a prime target for the Scourge due to its strategic, economic, and cultural significance. As the largest population center in the Eastweld, it was a hub of trade, religion, and military power, with its ports facilitating commerce and its temples reinforcing the Church of the Holy Light's influence. The city's proximity to Quoth Dalas and its role as a gateway to the northern provinces made it a linchpin for control over the region. If Stratholme fell to the Scourge, Lordaeron would lose its grip on the Eastwald, and the undead would gain a stronghold to expand their dominion. The Plague of Undeath, a sinister necromantic contagion crafted by the Lich King and spread by his cult of the damned, reached Stratholme through an insidious means, infected shipments of grain from the agricultural town of Anderhall. Unaware of the danger, Stratholme's citizens baked and consumed the tainted grain, unknowingly dooming themselves. The plague was designed to kill its victims and then reanimate them as mindless undead under the Scourge's control, making it a perfect weapon to destabilize and conquer human strongholds. The dreadlord Mal'Ganis, a key agent of the Lich King, deliberately chose Stratholme for its symbolic and strategic value, knowing its fall would cripple Lordaeron's defenses and morale. As the first signs of the plague emerged, citizens that fell ill and the dead that began to rise, panic gripped the city. The Church of the Holy Light, deeply entrenched in Stratholme, likely attempted to respond with healing and blessings, but the plague's supernatural nature defied their efforts. The situation deteriorated rapidly, setting the stage for one of the most harrowing decisions in Azeroth's history. Prince Arthas Menethil, heir to the throne of Lordaeron and a paladin of the Knights of the Silverhand, arrived in Stratholme alongside his mentor, Uther the Lightbringer, the mage Jaina Proudmoore, and a contingent of soldiers. Tasked with investigating the plague's spread, they were horrified to discover that Stratholme was already infected. The city's dense population had accelerated the plague's spread, and many residents were on the verge of turning into undead. Arthas, driven by a mixture of duty, desperation, and fear of the Scourge's growing power, concluded that the only way to prevent Stratholme from becoming a bastion of the undead was to purge the city entirely. Arthas' decision to order the massacre of Stratholme's population, including those who were infected but not yet turned, was both a strategic calculation and an act of grim mercy. Strategically, he believed that allowing the plague to fully take hold would create an unstoppable army of undead, threatening all of Lordaeron. Personally, Arthas saw the purge as a way to spare citizens a fate worse than death, becoming mindless slaves of the Scourge. He reasoned that a clean death as free-willed humans was preferable to the horror of undeath, a perspective shaped by his paladin training and his fear of losing his own humanity to the plague. However, the moral weight of this decision fractured his allies. Uther the Lightbringer, the embodiment of the Silverhand's ideals, was appalled by Arthas' plan, viewing it as a betrayal of the Light's principles of compassion and justice. Jaina Proudmoore, a brilliant mage and Arthas' close confidant, was equally horrified, unable to condone the slaughter of innocents. Both refused to participate, as did most of the soldiers and paladins under their command, denouncing Arthas' orders as madness. Undeterred, Arthas pressed forward with a smaller group of loyal soldiers determined to carry out the purge. The Culling of Stratholme was a brutal and harrowing affair. Arthas and his forces moved through the city, slaughtering plagued citizens before they could turn into undead. Fire was set to buildings to contain the plague, sending ash and embers billowing through the streets. The screams of the dying echoed across Stratholme as the blood of innocents stained the cobblestones. Entire families, merchants, and priests, many still clinging to hope, were cut down in a desperate bid to halt the Scourge's advance. Alongside the living, Arthas' forces also battled the undead that had already risen, adding to the chaos. Amid the carnage, Arthas confronted Mal'Ganis, the dreadlord orchestrating the plague's spread. Mal'Ganis taunted Arthas, reveling in the prince's descent into ruthlessness and revealing his role in manipulating the Scourge's campaign. Rather than engaging in a decisive battle, Mal'Ganis fled, urging Arthas to pursue him into the frozen continent of Northrend. This taunt was part of the Lich King's plan to lure Arthas deeper into despair and corruption, a trap that would ultimately lead to the prince's fall. Enraged but resolute, Arthas gathered his remaining forces and left Stratholme, leaving the city to burn in his wake. Days later, Jaina and Uther returned to Stratholme, hoping to assess the aftermath and perhaps salvage some semblance of hope. What they found was a scene of unimaginable devastation. The city was a smoldering husk, its streets littered with the bodies of the slain. The once vibrant markets, temples, and homes were reduced to ash, and the stench of death hung heavy in the air. The scale of the massacre shocked even those who had supported Arthas' plan, cementing the Culling as a moral and strategic catastrophe that would haunt the survivors and the Alliance. Despite Arthas' efforts, the Culling failed to fully eradicate the plague's influence in Stratholme. The Scourge soon swept through the city, capitalizing on the chaos and destruction. The remaining citizens, either missed during the purge or newly infected, turned into undead reinforcements, swelling the Scourge's ranks. Stratholme, intended to be saved, instead became a stronghold of the undead, fulfilling Mal'Ganis' sinister vision. The Knights of the Silver Hand, still active in the city, made a desperate attempt to resist the Scourge. Drawn on Stratholme's sacred legacy, they manufactured holy water, potent weapon against the undead, and stored in small crates alongside with other vital supplies. These crates were distributed throughout the city, intended to aid in the defense of key areas. Tragically, the rapid spread of the plague and the overwhelming force of the Scourge rendered these efforts futile. The supplies went unused, and the city fell under the complete control of the undead, its holy sites desecrated and its streets overrun. Amongst the Scourge's ranks was Raz Frostwhisper, a human mage who arrived in Stratholme at some point during this period. Frostwhisper, seduced by the Lich King's promise of power, pledged his soul to the Scourge and was raised as a Lich, becoming a formidable servant of the undead. His transformation symbolized the corruption that had taken root in Stratholme, as even those who had once served the light succumbed to the Lich King's influence. Following the Scourging of Lordaeron, during which the Death Knight Arthas, now a servant of the Lich King after his fateful journey to Northrend, raised much of the kingdom, Stratholme remained a key Scourge stronghold. After Arthas was called back to Northrend to defend the Lich King, the necromancer Kel'Thuzad, raised as a Lich and one of the Lich King's most trusted lieutenants, assumed leadership of the undead forces in the city. Kel'Thuzad positioned his floating fortress, the necropolis Naxxramas, above the plagued forests near Stratholme, using it as a base to oversee the Scourge's operations in the region. Naxxramas, a massive citadel of necromantic power, housed some of the Scourge's most powerful champions and served as a symbol of the Lich King's dominion over the Eastern Kingdoms. From this vantage point, Kel'Thuzad directed the Scourge's efforts to consolidate their hold on Stratholme and expand their influence across Lordaeron. The city, once a shining beacon of light, had become a dark mirror of its former self, its streets patrolled by undead horrors and its sacred halls defiled by necromantic ritual. The Culling of Stratholme was the defining moment in the Third War, marking the beginning of Arthas' tragic descent into darkness. His decision to purge the city, though driven by a desire to protect Lordaeron, eroded his humanity and alienated his allies, setting him on the path to claiming the cursed blade Frostmourne and becoming the Lich King's champion. The event also shattered the morale of the Alliance, as Uther and Jaina grappled with the moral implications of Arthas' actions and their own refusal to intervene. For Stratholme, the Culling was a culmination of a history marked by triumph and tragedy. From its founding as an Arathi settlement, to its role as the birthplace of the Silver Hand, and its destruction in the Second War, Stratholme had endured countless trials. The Third War, however, left it irrevocably scarred, its fall to the Scourge cementing its status as a symbol of lost hope. The city's transformation into a Scourge stronghold, overseen by Kel'Thuzad and Naxxramas, underscored the devastating reach of the Lich King's power. The events of Stratholme also had broader implications for Azeroth. The Culling highlighted the Scourge's cunning strategy, using the plague to turn humanity's own strengths, its population and infrastructure, against it. The failure of the Silverhand's holy water defenses and the rise of figures like Raz Frostwhisper illustrated the overwhelming nature of the Scourge's assault. Yet, even in its darkest hour, Stratholme's legacy endured through the memory of its sacred past, and the resolve of those who would later fight to reclaim the Eastern Kingdoms from the undead. The Culling of Stratholme stands as one of the most heart-wrenching episodes in Azeroth's history, a moment when desperation, duty, and despair collided into catastrophic effect. The Plague of Undeath, orchestrated by Mal'Ganis and the Lich King, exploited Stratholme's significance to deal a crippling blow to Lordaeron. Arthas' purge, though intended to save the kingdom, instead sowed the seeds of his own downfall and left the city in ruins. The Scourge's subsequent takeover, bolstered by figures such as Raz Frostwhisper and Kel'Thuzad, transformed Stratholme into a grim testament to the Lich King's power. Yet, the city's history as a bastion of light ensures that its story remains one of resilience, even in the face of overwhelming darkness. Ashbringer. After the catastrophic Culling of Stratholme and the Scourge's takeover, the city became a desolate stronghold of the undead. Once vibrant streets reduced to a smoldering ruin that burned perpetually due to the fires set during Arthas' purge. The necropolis Naxxramas, floating above the plagued forests nearby, served as a grim reminder of the Lich King's dominion, with the Lich Kel'Thuzad overseeing the Scourge's operations in the region. Stratholme's sacred sites, including the Lanza's Chapel and the Hall of Justice, were defiled, and its population was either slaughtered or transformed into mindless undead, making it a symbol of the Scourge's triumph over Lordaeron. Despite its fall, Stratholme remained a focal point for the remnants of the Alliance, particularly the Order of the Silver Hand, which had been decimated during the Third War. The Paladins, driven by their oath to the light and their desire to reclaim their holy city, saw Stratholme as both a strategic target and a spiritual imperative. The city's significance as the birthplace of the Silver Hand, coupled with its role as a Scourge stronghold, made it a battleground for the surviving Paladins who sought to honor their fallen comrades and restore the light's presence in the Eastwell. In the wake of the Third War, a group of surviving Paladins from the Order of the Silver Hand resolved to strike back against the Scourge in Stratholme. This group included some of the Order's most prominent figures: Bridget Abendis, a fervent and uncompromising Paladin dedicated to eradicating the undead; Alexandros Mograine, the legendary Ashbringer, wielder of the sacred blade of the same name and a symbol of hope for the Paladins; Tirion and Renault Mograine, Alexandros' sons, both young but trained in the way of the light, with Tirion showing particular promise as a Paladin; Seydan Dathrohan, one of the original 5 Paladins inducted in Alonza's Chapel, a stalwart leader of the Silver Hand; Tirion Fordring, son of Tirion Fordring, a devoted Paladin carrying his father's legacy despite Tyrion's exile. This group, representing the last bastion of the Silver Hand's leadership, launched a daring assault on Stratholme, aiming to disrupt the Scourge's control and reclaim the city's sacred sites. The mission was fraught with peril, as Stratholme was heavily fortified with undead forces, including ghouls, abominations, and necromancers, all under the influence of Kel'Thuzad and his dreadlord allies. The Paladins, armed with holy magic and the Light's blessing, fought their way into the city, their hammers glowing with divine powers as they sought to purge the undead taint from the streets. The Paladins' incursion into Stratholme was met with fierce resistance, and their mission took a tragic turn during an ambush by the Scourge. As they battled their way through the city's ruined districts, the group was overwhelmed by a coordinated assault of undead forces. During the chaos, Tirion Mograine, the younger son of Alexandros, was struck by a blast of dark magic, likely a necromantic spell or curse, which left him gravely wounded and incapacitated. The attack disrupted the Paladins' formation, sowing confusion and exposing their vulnerabilities. In the midst of the ambush, Seydan Dathrohan was separated from the group, a seemingly random occurrence that proved to be a calculated move by the Scourge. Unbeknownst to the Paladins, Seydan was ambushed and killed by the dreadlord Balnazar, one of the Nathrezim serving the Lich King. Balnazar, a master of deception and manipulation, saw an opportunity to infiltrate the Silver Hand and sow discord among the Paladins. Using his demonic powers, he possessed Seydan's body, assuming the guise of the Lord Commander to undermine the Order from within. This act of subterfuge was a devastating blow, as Seydan's authority and reputation made his impostor a trusted figure among the surviving Paladins. From Tyrion's exile and Thrall's daring raid, to the horrors of the Culling and the Scourge's takeover, Stratholme's legacy is steeped in tragedy. But the darkness deepens as a Silver Hand faces betrayal from within, and a cunning dreadlord tightens his grip. Next time, we'll uncover the heartbreaking fall of a legendary hero and the rise of a fanatical crusade, as Stratholme burns under the Scourge's rule. Want to know more about the demon pulling the strings? Then check out the Balnazar lore video linked in the top right corner of your screen. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell to join us for the next chapter of Azeroth's darkest tale.